What's up, Nightwalkers? Today I'm going over the Legacy Kodi and the Breach. People ask me on a pretty regular basis which one of these they should purchase. And this question actually never used to be a question not that long ago because the Kodis traditionally were pretty expensive compared to what they're selling for right now. And so what's happened is the Kodi is discontinued and it's being blown out for some pretty good prices compared to what the prices used to be by Euro Optics. And so right now you can get a Kodi with an iCup adapter for about $3,000. And that's a pretty good deal considering that these iCup adapters are actually pretty expensive as an accessory by themselves. I know a couple of guys that paid about $500 for these things. Breaches sell for about $2,500, and three grand versus 25. That's close enough in price where it's going to definitely give you a decision to make between which one of these two to purchase. This thing is an absolutely awesome add-on accessory for your night vision. I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and that is overlay the thermal image perfectly on top of your night vision image for a seamless integration that's easy to look at, and it just performs great together. Inside the device, there's menus where you could adjust the overlay so you can get this thing to line up right, because just depending on certain devices and how you have to get them on here, it may not be a perfect overlay to begin with. However, that's what the menu's for, and you can adjust it to make it line up perfectly for your eye. Now, as a dedicated thermal device, it's not so great. That's obvious. I mean, this thing was meant to be used with night vision, and so even with your iCup adapter on here, I mean, this is better than nothing if this is the only thermal device that you have. However, the performance of this thing as a thermal monocular with this iCup adapter, it's not great. I mean, it'll work for like looking at your dog up close and stuff like that, but it's definitely not going to give you the same type of performance as a dedicated thermal monocular. It does work pretty good on a single PVS 14. Just keep in mind that when you have it turned off, you're going to see a little bit of shadow from the projector right here. If you're going to use the Kodi with the dual bridge system, for example, this is a KVC with OSS shoes. Obviously, since the Kodi requires this adapter that goes onto the Infinity lock ring, the OSS shoe for the right eye, it uses a ring system like this already, so it's not going to be compatible with the lock ring. However, you can take this off and stick it on the lens. The other thing is, other bridges, for example, like the TNVC, NPBM, and PBMs, they also use rings on them. However, with those systems, you can remove the ring if you had to, or like I said, you can just mount it on the objective lens. The device controls are actually really easy to use and very intuitive. On the Kodi, you've got two buttons, one on this side, one on that side. This is actually a button as well, but it's also a lever that turns it off and on, and then it controls your brightness. And then on the Breach, you just have these three buttons on this one side right here. Both of these use a 123A battery, just a single one. However, on the Breach, you do have this port on it, and so this is a USB-C port. And what that port allows you to do, besides downloading videos and photos, is you can connect a cable. So this is a USB-C to USB-A cable, and you could DIY your own remote battery pack solution. So you can pick up one of these Anker batteries. That's a USB battery pack. You can also buy a pre-built kit. At TNVC we sell a kit with an Anker battery and the cable and everything. It's called the TRB. The remote battery pack options for the Kodi, they're pretty hard to get right now, and they're very expensive compared to the Breach. And so most people, for the most part, they're just going to run off of the 123s, which actually works pretty good. So for example, on this thing, when you turn it on, this is how you adjust the brightness on it. But it turns off and on almost instantaneously. So it's pretty fast to put it on and off, and generally most people, they're not going to be running around with the thermal on constantly, so they'll just basically turn it on as they need it. However, you do have to be mindful of the 123A battery inside the Kodi, and especially when it's cold out, the batteries don't last at all. Whereas with the Breach, you have the 123A battery option as well as the remote battery pack option like I just showed you, and then you can also pick up a battery extender to run rechargeable 16650s in it. And so the Breach definitely has the nod in terms of better and more affordable power options compared to the Kodi. This thing obviously is going to add some weight onto your device, and so I've got the battery installed inside of it, and the weight of it at 5 ounces, that's pretty significant. It's a decent amount of weight to add onto your night vision device. And just for comparison's sake, here's the Breach. I have a K-clip on it, and I also have the battery installed inside. And so at 7.9 ounces, this thing is still fairly light, but the difference in weight, it's not huge, between the Kodi and the Breach. And then just to give you an example for the size, they are pretty similar in terms of size. The performance difference between these two is pretty significant, and that shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody because the Breach, this thing is meant to be a thermal monocular to where you're just using this thing by itself for the most part as a thermal scanner. It's got a much bigger screen that's color, compared to the Kodi, which has a much smaller screen. It's meant to be used clipped onto your night vision device in combination with night vision. And so I'm going to show you some videos here just so you can see the difference in performance between the two and kind of how they match up side by side. Now the biggest thing that stands out is with the Kodi is only a 20-degree field of view, as you can see from the thermal, and then the level of detail that you get from a dedicated thermal monocular, in this case the Breach, is just far superior compared to the Kodi. And so you can see that from the snow, from my footprints where I've been walking, as well as the branches and stuff that you can see in those junipers and those pinions compared to on the left-hand side. You just don't see that same level of detail. And so that's the most significant difference in performance, is that from a true thermal perspective, obviously a dedicated thermal is just going to give you much more performance compared to a clip-on imager like the Kodi. So the Kodi is going to give you rapid detection, while you're using it with night vision. Now the biggest difference between these two thermals is with the dedicated thermal, it's easy to identify people, two-legged creatures, we stand out, and even other animals, you can identify them pretty easily based on their shape and how they move. However, actually identifying who the person is very difficult, sometimes impossible with thermal. Whereas with something like the Kodi, because it's being used with night vision, I can turn on an infrared illuminator, light up the target I'm looking at, and then the IR illuminator is going to overpower the Kodi's thermal outline or image, and then I can actually see facial characteristics to make a good identification of the person. Okay, I only have this shot with the Breach. I didn't get the same video with the Kodi. The reason I put this one in here is, number one, just to kind of show you the outdoor alert mode. I'm a big fan of that mode. I think it really does a good job of just making animals or living creatures pop out on the thermal. And this is another just good example to show how you can identify animals by thermal alone, not necessarily requiring night vision to do so. For example, this is a coyote. You could easily tell that just based on its size, its shape, and especially its behavior and just how it's acting. I know the question is going to come up, how does the Kodi compare to the E-Kodi? Now I don't have the E-Kodi anymore to show you side by side, but I do have a similar shot from before. So this is Kodi on the left, E-Kodi on the right, and I can tell you 100% that the E-Kodi certainly has more performance than the Kodi does. Another big plus to the E-Kodi is that it's current production, and so it has full support right now compared to the Kodi, which is basically discontinued. So to wrap up the video and answer the question, which one should you buy? My answer to that is buy both if you can do it. And so that sounds kind of cheesy, but let me explain why I say that. When you're using the Kodi with your night vision, sometimes, you just cannot identify what you're looking at with the Kodi. In that case where if you get a thermal hit with the Kodi and you see it, depending on the position of the animal, the way it's facing you, the distance, the conditions outside, whatever the case is, you may not be able to really tell what the hell it is you're looking at. And so if you only have the Kodi, you're going to have to use an illuminator on your PVS-14 or your night vision device to light up the animal or whatever the object is to try to identify it. Now, if you can't do it, maybe it's obstructed behind vegetation, whatever the case is, then having the dedicated thermal like the Breach, you can simply rotate up your Kodi with your night vision device and use the thermal for a much better detection capability and identification capability using thermal by itself, because obviously this gives you more performance. And then the same thing if you have binos. So if you have binos, and let's say you've got your Kodi on your binos and you get a thermal hit, if you can't make it out and then your illuminator isn't doing the trick for you, take your thermal device and use this to try to get a better identification on the animal or the object that you're trying to identify with your night vision and thermal. If you can't afford to do something like this in terms of the Kodi and then a thermal, whether it's with a single PVS-14, binos, whatever the case is, then the first thing I would do is determine and decide exactly what it is that you want your thermal device to allow you to do. So for example, if you just want the ability to detect that there's animals out there, so that way you kind of know where to look, then definitely having the Kodi with your PVS-14 is going to do that. In terms of you're going to tell there's something there, and then you can know where to look, and you could use your infrared illuminator on your helmet or your gun, whatever it is, to try to identify it, and then go from there, make whatever decision you're trying to do. However, if your key thing is identify and detect you're definitely going to have far superior detection and identification capabilities with thermal using the Breach compared to the Kodi. And so that's the key thing I would do, is just determine exactly what it is that you're looking to get from your thermal device in addition to your night vision. So anyways, I hope this video helped you out, maybe gave you some ideas with it, and kind of showed you and explained the performance difference between these two different devices. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments section. You can always get a hold of me through TNVC as well. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.